Hello, I'm Hannah, and this is Hannah's Books. I come to you today with a book tag, the Amplify Voices book tag, put together by Jennie Johnston. I've linked to her very moving video below. To answer her prompts, I've chosen a poem I've been thinking about a lot in the last couple of weeks, When I Think of Tamir Rice While Driving, by Reginald Dwayne Betts. Tamir Rice, as I'm sure many of you remember, was a 12-year-old black boy from Cleveland, Ohio, who in late 2014 was shot by a police officer and died of his wounds the following day. Tamir Rice was playing in a community recreation center, playing with a toy pistol. Someone called 911, saying from the beginning that the pistol was, quote, probably fake, and that the suspect was, quote, probably a juvenile. The operator asked repeatedly if the suspect was black or white. The police dispatcher informed the two officers who went to the scene that the suspect was black, but she neglected to mention that he was probably a child with a toy gun. The officers arrived and immediately started shooting, apparently not considering that the gun might be fake, even though many people have explained that it should have been fairly easy just by looking to tell that it was pretend, and apparently not considering that the person holding the toy gun was a child. The grand jury did not indict the officers. Sometime afterwards, it was discovered that in the police department he worked in before being hired by Cleveland, the police officer who shot Tamir Rice had been deemed emotionally unstable, exhibiting, quote, a dangerous lack of composure when handling weapons, and that he was unfit for duty. But he did not volunteer that information to the Cleveland police in his application, nor did Cleveland review his earlier personnel file before they hired him. 3 years after the shooting, the Cleveland police finally fired the officer, but nothing more. The shooting of Tamir Rice was one of the police killings that helped spark the Black Lives Matter movement. Reginald Dwayne Betts grew up very close to the community where I live, right over the northeast border between Maryland and Washington, D.C. When he was 16 years old, he and a friend carjacked a man asleep in his parked vehicle. Betts was charged as an adult and spent the next 8 years in prison. More than a year of that time was spent in solitary confinement. There, he graduated from high school, and after someone slipped him a collection of poetry by black poets while he was in solitary confinement, he became a reader and a writer of poetry. After he was finally released, Betts started working in a local bookstore, where he led a reading group for young African American boys. He became a leader and an activist, and was appointed by President Obama to be a member of the coordinating council addressing issues surrounding juvenile justice. He also continued his education, eventually graduating from Yale Law School. Betts has published 3 books of poetry, including the 2019 collection Felon, as well as a memoir about his experiences in the justice system. A couple of years after the killing of Tamir Rice, a friend of mine shared a Reginald Dwayne Betts poem about the young boy. Of course, it's always an incredibly powerful poem, but it's especially timely right now. Jennie asked those of us doing this tag to read the piece, and I will, but I want to say you really ought to go listen to Betts read the poem himself. Perhaps that's always best when you listen to poetry, to hear the poet read the words, even if you also listen to other readings. I think it's especially true in this case. The narrator in this poem is very much not an old white lady, and the narrator's position is really important in this poem. I will link below in the description box to Betts' own reading of the poem, and I hope you will go listen. But here goes. When I think about Tamir Rice while driving, in the back seat of my car are my own sons, still not yet Tamir's age, already having heard me warn them against playing with toy pistols, though my rhetoric is always about what I don't like, not what I fear. Because sometimes I think of Tamir Rice and shed tears, the weeping, all another insignificance, all another way to avoid saying what should be said. The Second Amendment is a ruthless one, the pomp and constitutional circumstance that says my arm should be heavy with the weight of a pistol when forced to confront death like this. A child, a hidden toy gun, an officer that fires before his heart beats twice. My 2 young sons play in the back seat while the video of Tamir dying plays in my head. And for everything I do know, the thing I don't say is that this should not be the brick and mortar of poetry. The moment when a black father drives his black sons to school, and the thing in the air is the death of a black boy that the father cannot mention. Because to mention the death is to invite discussion of taboo. If you touch my sons, the crimson that touches the concrete must belong at some point to you, the police officer who justifies the echo of the fired pistol. Taboo, the thing that says that justice is a killer's body mangled and disrupted by bullets because his mind would not accept the narrative of your child's dignity, of his right to life, of his humanity, and the crystalline brilliance you saw when your boys first breathed. The narrative must invite more than the children bleeding on crisp fall days, and this is why I hate it all. The people around me, the black people who march, the white people who cheer, the other brown people, Latinos and Asians, and all the colors of humanity that we erase in this American dance around death, as we are not permitted to articulate the reasons we might yearn to see a man die. There is so much that has to disappear for my mind not to abandon sanity. Tamir, for instance, everything about him, even as his face really and truly reminds me of my own, in the last photo I took before heading off to a cell, disappears, and all I have stomach for is blood. And there's a part of me that wishes that it would go away, the memories, and that I could abandon all talk of making it right and justice. But my mind is no sieve, and sanity is no elixir, and I am bound to be haunted by the strength that lets Tamir's father, mother, kinfolk resist the temptation to turn everything they see into a grave and make home the series of cells that so many of my brothers already call their tomb. The last prompt is to tag some white booktubers. I'd like to tag Jack at Rambling Raconteur, who put out a really powerful post talking about the history of racial injustice in the United States and what it means to him and his family. I'd also like to tag Lindsay at Lindsay's Book Life, who just put up a wonderful discussion of 27 books by Black women writers, inspired by Karen at Run Right Reads, to mark what would have been the 27th birthday of Breonna Taylor, shot by police officers while she slept in her bed. I will leave both of their links in the description. Thanks for joining me today. See you soon.